Hello and welcome to this Carveco Maker tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to continue with epoxy inlays, but this time we're going to create a 4-pore epoxy inlay to do this piece from a well-known movie. Now the process is pretty much similar to the first video where you would cut into the piece, pour the epoxy, but in this video what we're going to do is cut into the piece, pour the epoxy, and then we're going to cut in again, pour again, cut in again, pour again, and so on. And that builds up the finished piece. So let's switch over to Carveco Maker now and take a look how you can get this designed and machined.
This is the piece that I want to produce with the epoxy. So it's a well-known movie. You may recognize the logo from it. And as you can see, it's black, yellow, white, and there's a grey colour. So we're going to be doing 4 epoxy fills for this. Now the design side of this is quite easy really, but there are a couple of things that we need to do. Firstly, get the image. So I've just gone on to Google, done a search for Weyland-Yutani Corporation, and then I found basically any logo that looks a bit crisp really. So if I zoom in, you can see it looks okay. It doesn't look amazing, but it's okay. So what I need to do is put this into Carveco Maker. So let's open up Carveco Maker. And I've created a model that is 11 inches by 9 inches. And this is the size of the piece of wood that I actually have on the machine. And I've set my origin to be in the center. First thing that I need to do is import that image into Carveco. So if I right click on bitmaps, select import, and then I've got the image there. So I'm going to select open. And that opens up the image for me. The next thing that I want to do is trace this, because I don't want to spend time having to go around this manually and create all the vectors. Now there is a caveat in that I know that the text isn't going to work properly, and I'll show you why. So the main reason that I'm doing this for is the W and these sort of triangular shapes. So if I go over to bitmap to vector to trace it, and by default I've got create boundary set, speckle size of 2 and a smoothness of 75. First thing that I need to do is reduce these colours down. As you can see down the bottom, I've got lots and lots of colours. So first of all, reduce the colours. I'm going to bring this right the way down to 2 colours to start with. I'm going to use the black colour to trace around and create vectors. So if I bring that down, you can see that it's created the vectors for me. Now I've got a little bit of a dilemma here, and that is the text. If I undo that and bring that back up, now because I've basically combined a lot of the colours here, the text doesn't look great. But the text in the actual image, if you take a look here, you can see that there are parts of it that are nice and curved, and there are parts of it that are quite angular. And also with the logo, it's quite angular. So I need something that is quite angular, but then at the same time, it's also curved where it needs to be. Now I can't do that with these settings because I've just got the smoothness factor. So it's either smooth or it's sharp and angular. I can't really do this if I were to set that, let's say at 1, create the vectors, let's turn that down, you can see that I get sharp corners, and you can see it's getting quite jaggedy here. Now that's great for the logo, that's exactly what I want, but for the text, it's not what I want. So if I were to undo that, set it at 100, which is really smooth, create that, it does the opposite. So there are parts of the text that I want to actually be angular and not smooth. So I need something in between. Now I could be spending ages trying to find the happy medium here with this smoothness factor. What I'm going to do, I don't think that, because I've blended these colors into each other, I don't think that I'm going to get text that is that crisp, because it's so small, and I'm just pretty sure that I won't. So what I'm going to do is click create, and then what I'm going to do is close this, and I'm going to go to the 3D view to do this. I'm going to turn off my origin so it gets out of the way, and all of the text, I'm actually going to delete it, because I'm going to find the correct font for it and write my own, and I know that that will be perfect then. I know that it will be okay. So let's open up Google, and I'm going to type in Wayland Yutani font. And if you do that, you'll get a lot of examples pop up, and I think I clicked on here. Someone was asking what it actually was. Then the bottom, someone suggested a font called Microgrammar, which is actually the one that I used. So if you go there, you can see this Microgrammar. Now, I didn't pay for it. There's actually a free version out there. And this is what it looks like. And it's pretty close to the actual text on that logo, and I was absolutely fine with it. So I've double clicked on that, select install, and it will load into the software. Now you need to restart Carveco Maker, so make sure that you save this and restart it. I've already installed it, so it should be good to go. So if I go back to the 2D view now, just so I know what sort of size that I want this to be, click on the text icon, I'll click there, and then let's change this to inches. Let's try 1/2 inch. Looks okay. And then I need to come down to Microgrammar, which is there. Then I'm going to type in Wayland Yutani Corp. Let's select all of that, and then let's make it a little bit smaller. I'll zoom in. Make sure that you've got the character spacing okay. Maybe do it a little bit more. Right, so, and I'm not going to bother messing around with the size of this in this tool, because I want to move it into the correct position. So I'm just going to create this now, and I'm going to press F9 to center that, and then I'm going to transform it. Press Alt down on the keyboard, and I'm just going to do it somewhere near, like so, and then again press Alt down. I'm just going to move that up, just so it looks about right. So that's not actually that far away. Now, I could make it a little bit larger if I wanted to. I'm not going to bother. What I am going to do though is press F9 for that. Make sure that that's in the center. Bring it down just a touch. Okay, so that's the text for the Wayland-Yutani, and then just need to do this building better worlds. I'm going to use exactly the same font for that. So quotation marks. Let's make this a little bit smaller to start off with. So quotation marks, building better worlds, and then click create. F9, move that down, press Alt on the keyboard to about there. Then I'm going to go into transform again, press Alt down, bring that out to about there. Now that one's not matching perfectly, but I'm not really fussed about that, and no one will tell the difference. But the good thing about this is that, see how I have all of these sharp corners and curves. Now I wouldn't be able to get that from tracing. So if you can find the font, I would recommend doing so. Let's go to the 3D view. And that is pretty much ready to machine. Need to sort out what size I want it to be though. So at the moment, this is 4.5 inches wide. Let's transform that and let's make it exactly 4.5 wide. Select apply, and then I'm going to create a rectangle around that. And let's do this, let's say about 7 by 3 inches. I'll press F9 for that. Okay, so this is almost good to go. What I want to do though is I want to split this up into the colors that I'm going to machine. And it helps a great deal when you actually get to the machining side of things. So let's open up the vector layers, and we need to think about this working from the back. So if I open up the image so you can see, the first thing that we need to do is pour the black color, and then everything else is going to be poured into the black color. So the first thing that we need to do is put this border here onto a new layer, which is called black. And that's going to be our black pour. So if I go to move vectors to new layer, and I'm going to call this 1 and then black. Now you'll see why I'm doing this in a moment. It makes things a lot easier, especially when you're doing a large pour, which you'll see in the next example. Then you can basically do this in any order that you like. I chose to do the yellow next, so let's click that. As you can see here, that W is in yellow. I'm going to right click on there, move vectors to new layer again. And I'm going to change this to be 2 and then yellow. And if you want, you can change the color of that. If I do that, you're not going to be able to see it very well, only if you're in the 2D view. So just keep that in mind. I may just put that back to black, just so I can see it. These 3 pieces, right click, move vectors to new layer, number 3, and I'm going to call this grey. And I will change the colour of these to be grey, maybe a darker one so I can see it. And then finally the text, move these to a new layer, and this is going to be 4, which is white. And I may change this, see if we can see it. Okay, we'll leave that there. I can see what it is. So we're ready to machine this now. So if you go to toolpaths, what we're going to do is a V-bit carving for these, exactly the same as the first example when we've done the one epoxy pour. So create a V-bit carving toolpath. Now, rather than selected vectors for the vector association, we don't need to select whatever vectors. And this is really, really useful when you're doing a complicated job and when you're doing a lot of pours, and it helps out immensely. It saves you having to select all of those different colors, and it doesn't get you in a muddle. So if you go to black, so that's the first one that we're going to do. And I'm going to limit this to a maximum depth of, let's say 0.12 inches or 3 millimeters. Select a carving tool. So I'm going to come down to here. I've got a 60-degree V-bit. Click select. And I'm probably going to change my plunge rate for that because that's quite a lot. So let's say 500 millimeters a minute. Click refresh and it will tell you how far this actually wants to get down. So if I didn't limit the maximum depth, it would actually try to get down 2.6 inches, which probably wouldn't be the best. So make sure that you limit that depth. Now for this one, if I were to use this V-bit to do the whole thing, it's going to take ages. So what I'm going to do for just this one is use a roughing tool as well. So click select, and I'm going to use this 1/4 inch down cut tool that I have. Roughing tool allowance. Now I don't really want to leave 1/2 inch as a roughing tool allowance. Let's maybe leave, let's say 10 thou on there. My safe Z and home Z, 0.2. Define the material. I know that the material is 3/4 of an inch, so I'm going to put that in there. So select OK. And then I can calculate this. So that's calculated the toolpath. I can then close that. And then what I'm going to do is select to rename this toolpath. I'm going to call it 1 black, just so I know the order when I go to save this out. So if I simulate this, you can see that I've got a roughing toolpath, and then I've got the finishing for the V-bit toolpath. What I tend to do most of the time is run the V-bit first rather than the end mill, because you don't get so much tear out in the final piece. So that's what you'll see me do on the machine. I'll run the V-bit first. Delete the simulation. Let's turn on the vectors again, and I'm going to turn off the visibility of those vectors. So I'm going to do all of these toolpaths first of all, save them, send them to the machine, and then I'm going to do this over a bunch of days. So machine the black, pour, wait for 24 hours, then machine the yellow, pour, wait again for 24 hours, machine the grey, and so on. Now a real nice thing that you can do with this is once you've done the first black one, is right click, click duplicate, and I'm going to rename that to be 2, and this is going to be yellow. Double click on there and then change the settings for it. So I don't want a roughing tool for this because it's just this yellow, and I've got to be honest, I can't be bothered to change the tool. So how long it will take me to change the tool, I could just leave it running and be doing something else. So let's deselect that, and This time I'm going to limit this to a maximum depth, but I'm going to do it by 0.1. The reason being is if I were to do it to the same depth, it may actually cut through that black epoxy and I'd have to seal it again, which would be a complete pain. So go a little bit shallower and then you won't have to reseal it and you can just pour straight onto the top of the epoxy. So if I calculate that, what I haven't done is change the vector association. So see how it's done the whole thing? What I need to do is change this to be yellow. Click calculate, and then it does the W I have there. So if you want to, you can simulate this just to see what it does. So just make sure that it's cutting the correct piece. Let's delete that. Now, this is where it gets really easy because what I can do is just literally duplicate this yellow toolpath. So if I click duplicate, change that to be free and grey, double click on it, change the vector association to be grey, calculate now, and then it creates the toolpath for that. So it's really, really fast doing it like this. Again, create another duplicate. Let's change that to be 4 and white. Change the association again to be white. So this is why it's worthwhile doing that to begin with, because it speeds things up in the long run. Click calculate. Okay, so we've got some vector intersections somewhere. So we need to sort that out before I can carry on with that. So let's take a look at that. So let's select both of those, go to the vector doctor, and then identify. You can see I've got a lot going on here. Okay, so I haven't actually spaced this out far enough, so I've got intersections here. There's something else going on here. What I'm going to do is see if the vector doctor can help me out any. Fix problems, clear the markers, identify again. Okay, so it can't fix those because it doesn't know what to do, so that's not a problem. You can select both of those, right click, go to merge, select weld, and that will join them together. Again with this one, let's do the same thing there. Right click, merge vectors, weld. Now what's happened here, see how this has turned to grey. Now, because I've welded those and my layer is actually set to grey, it's moved them to the grey layer. So what I need to do is select them. If this ever happens to you, select everything and then move to the white layer. And then I'm going to right click on the white layer, select all vectors. Let's clear those markers and identify again. And I don't think that there's anything coming up now. I think I'm okay. So let's try calculating that again. Okay, so that looks okay. And then let's simulate this one. Nice crisp lettering. That's what we want. Okay, great. So now we can delete that, turn on the vectors again, and then I can save this out for the Onefinity. So if I go to toolpaths, click save, save all of the toolpaths to separate files, and I'm going to call this Wayland. I'm also going to append toolpath details to file name. So what will happen is each one of these will save out with the description here, so I know which one this is, and I can just run this in days to come. So let's switch back over onto the machine now, and I'm going to run the first black V bit. Now it doesn't matter which order that you do these in. As I said before, I like to do the V bit first, it minimises tear rate. Okay, so obviously that wasn't supposed to happen, but I thought that I would leave it in the video just so you can see that everyone makes mistakes. I did stick some tape down on the back of it, but I didn't clean the wasteboard and there was lots of dust and debris and it just moved. So I'm going to do the good old-fashioned method of screwing the piece of wood down to the wasteboard. It's not going to move now. Make sure that you seal this as we done in the previous video. Just put some epoxy on there and brush it all on. Make sure that the epoxy doesn't bleed when you pour it. Once this is finished machining, what I tend to do is move the tool away from the job in one direction, in the Y. Let's say, for instance, I move it 12 inches in the Y, just to move it out of the way. And then what I do is make a mental note that that is moved 12 inches. So when I come back in the morning, I don't home the machine. I just turn it on, move back minus 12 inches, and then set my 0, 0 up there. And then I know that I'm in the same place as I was yesterday. So as in the first epoxy that we've done, I'm going to mix up some more black epoxy now using the wet system epoxy, and I've got the pumps on here so I don't need to measure out the ratio. So it's just 1 to 1, one pump and one pump. So I'm going to fill the whole of that in now. So let's do maybe 3 pumps for this. 1, 2, 3, and then 3 of the epoxy. 1, 2, and 3. I think I may need a little bit more, so let's do 1 more on each. Like so. And then this time I'm using this pigment that I have here, just saying that it's super black. I've got to be honest, I have no idea where I got this from, and I just wanted to see what it turns out like, really. So let's give it a go. Okay, so just looks like some acrylic paint, to be honest. So let's take a dollop of that, stick it in there. Okay, and then let's mix it up again for a couple of minutes. Okay, so that looks okay. So let's get pouring. As I said, we need to overfill this.
especially this one, because this one is going to have more colours put in there. So this needs to overfill because the top of this level needs to be level with the top of the block. So let's pour it in. It should automatically find its level. Now this one's a lot easier to do than the first one because you're literally just pouring it in here. As I said, make sure that you overfill it. Make sure that it's above the surface. I've just got enough epoxy. And then, as before, use the blowtorch on it, get rid of all the bubbles. And we need to do this every 15 minutes for about an hour, hour and a half. Right, so now that this is dry, first thing that we need to do is take all the tape off. And I'll come back to my original datum or my original origin point. Which is there. I'm just going to set my 0 there. And something that I've done probably wrong when setting this up was that I set my Z0 in the center of this. Now I can't do that now because this epoxy is higher than the actual board. So what I need to do is come onto the board and set my 0 on there. But I should have done it in the same place. I would always do it for everyone in the same place. So hopefully it will match up, but it could be a little bit out. So I'm going to come over to there and then let's come down. Just touch on it and I'll probably come down about another 0.1 of a millimetre or 4 feb and then set my 0. Bring that back up. I'll just go back to my origin. And then I just need to load in the toolpath and run this. Now that that's finished machining, I'm going to mix up some yellow coloured epoxy. Now, I found yellow to be particularly difficult because it tends to be quite translucent. So I've discovered that you need to put quite a lot of yellow in there to actually create sort of the opaque effect. And then you can pour it into the part that you've just machined. Now again, make sure that you overfill this. And also use the blowtorch. Get rid of those bubbles. Leave it 24 hours and then you can come back and then machine the next part. One thing that you need to watch out for is, as you can see on this, as you start to put more and more epoxy in there, it will build up. So that start depth that you have will not be true because there'll be more material on the top with the epoxy. So that's one of the reasons that I adjusted the plunge rate to be quite low. And you can also see here, machining it, that I'm doing quite small passes to machine this. So I don't want the tip of the V-bit to break. I'm now mixing up for the next part. So I'm using some Divine pigments for this. And I'm using white and a darker grey. I just want a really, really light grey colour, so I'm mixing the two colours together. And then again, pour into here. Now, again, you're overfilling with this one. So with these just three epoxy colours, you can see that there's quite a bit left onto the material. So you need to watch when you plunge down for that cut if you're cutting into these. Again, use the blowtorch, and then you can get machining again. So this is for the lettering. So you can see that the letters don't really make much sense at the moment because that height isn't actually true because I've set it to be the top of the wood. So when it's skimmed off, it will look quite good. And then finally, for the last pour, mixing up some white epoxy. This is using Divine Pigments again. And I'm pouring this into a small squeegee bottle just because I don't want to get this everywhere. I want to do it quite localized. And you can just see here that all of these different layers of epoxy are adding to the thickness. Come back after 24 hours and this is now ready to machine off. So I'm going to do this with a white side surfacing bit, and I'm just setting this up manually in this bottom corner, touching on. And then what I'm going to do with this is back it off just about 0.1 of a millimeter or 1/4. And to do this in the software, just do an area clearance set to a depth. But I'm doing this in a couple of passes because I noticed on the larger piece that if you do it all in one go, it tended to chip the epoxy. So just a word of warning, it will do it absolutely fine. But when I've done the larger one, it chipped the epoxy. All that needs to be done now is to cut the part out. So I'm going to switch back over to Carveco Maker, and the outside rectangle that you can see on the screen, just a very basic profile cutout. So if we go to toolpaths, go to create profile toolpath, and I'm going to select the rectangle as the vector to machine. I'm going to have a finish depth of 0.75. Let me just expand that so you can see. And I'm going to select a profiling tool. So let's come down to my workshop tools. So I've got a 1/4 inch down cut. So I'll select that. I'm going to do this conventional, and I'm going to add ramping moves.
So I'm going to do some zigzagging, going to add the lead in, lead out. So let's do a linear. Let's give it a distance, let's say 1 inch. And I'm also going to add some bridges. So I'm going to do 4 bridges, and I'm going to do these quite small. So let's say 40 thou, and a thickness, yeah, about 40 thou again. So they're really small, just going to hold them in. And then I'm going to do 2D bridges, select add, adds the 4 bridges. Set my safe Z. Let's say 0.2 of an inch for the home and the safe. My material is 3/4 of an inch. Calculate now. Okay, so that looks okay. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to have this lead in, lead out happen on the corner where the start point is. So I'm going to turn off automatic positioning. And that's going to put it on the start point. So if I go to simulation control bar, let's rotate around, click play, and you can see it's just cut the part out, left me with some really tiny bridges so I can get the part out. So I'm going to save this out as I did before, just save the toolpaths, send this over to the machine, let's get cutting.
So as you can see, this is 4 pours. Pretty easy to do, to be honest. In the next video, we're going to take a look at doing quite a large pour. I believe 14 or 15 pours. So I'll see you on the next video where we'll be doing that large dragon epoxy example.